I met her at the EO Women's Summit in Morocco last year, and she is just so amazing. She's so humble and down to earth, but not only is she a badass entrepreneur who has built a seven-figure plus business, that's why she's an EO, but she's also a former mayor. So she's been a trailblazer for many years, I'm sure. And I'd love to I'm so grateful to have you on here. I'd love to hear your story myself. So thank you for making time to share your story and to help me on this mission, which is to educate, empower, and inspire the next generation of business leaders to reach the milestones that you and I have. So
Great.
thank you. Yeah. So to start, I'd love to hear your origin story. Like, how did you
Sure.
get on your entrepreneur journey? Is this
Sure.
like, did you go straight into it, or did you have a whole other career before entrepreneurship?
Okay, great. So, in some ways, I feel like an accidental entrepreneur. My parents were not entrepreneurs, but what I always was independent, sovereign, and wanted to do my own thing. So naturally, why would I want to work for anyone? Let's just start with that. So, I actually had my own bit of a consulting company for youth league registration, sports leagues kind of thing. And then I went to law school to become an NFL agent. Actually, that was my purpose. And when I went to law school, I realized I don't want to be an NFL agent. That's not really, it's like adult babysitting. I don't want to do it. But I was in law school, and I actually had the opportunity through clerking to work on a case against a management company, an attorney, and a developer. And in that situation, I realized there was this whole area of law called community association management. So this is for condos and HOAs. And I went to the partner of that law firm as a 1L, and I said, you should give me $25,000, and I'm going to start a company because I can do this better than they're doing. And he was like, you know what? That seems like a great investment. And that guy started me a check, and I started my first company in law school. So I built a property management company in law school. It was very much unheard of because you're supposed to stay super focused on the law. But I was really clear, and I had already had some life experience. I was already almost 10 years outside of college. So I built I built the property management company during law school. And then I just to give you some time reference, graduated in 2007 and sold it in 2010. But in 2007, I started my own law firm, and then I started a title company. So I have two running businesses now, and I did join EO as an accelerator with my
Oh,
property.
wow. That's so cool. And
Yeah,
how
so that's
long?
the
Yeah,
background.
that's amazing. So you started like 3 different businesses then, basically. So it's property management, title, and law.
Law firm. Yep,
And you still have still have the law firm and the title?
that's correct. I sold the
Oh,
management company in 2010, and the law firm and the title company have been growing ever since, and it's been a
that's
lot of fun.
amazing. And
Yeah.
how long, I love that you mentioned accelerator, because I'd love to hear like how long did it take you to go from accelerator to graduating?
Yeah. So I joined Accelerator. It's funny. I sometimes argue with people about what the dates were. I think it was like 2009, maybe. But it was 2 years of Accelerator, and then I moved into EO. So Accelerator, as you know, is a incubator to take you from 250,000 to $1 million. And what I tell you is, when I started the management company, it was like me and a computer, right? And as one partner figuring things out, what Accelerator gave me is really understanding the fundamentals of business, right? The big pillars: people, money, cash, and strategy. And then moving into EO, I was just able to expand from there, having, literally no business background, right? Like my parents were entrepreneurs. I didn't get my MBA. I have a background in political science and sports management.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah. But entrepreneurs are resourceful.
that's
We make it
right.
work.
Well, it's a
And
mindset, right? To be an
yes,
entrepreneur, it's somebody who can actually take an idea and then
yeah,
actually create it so it's in the
yes,
physical world.
exactly.
That's what I say.
Exactly. It's so true though. And I was like, so I don't know if you don't mind sharing the specifics, like, because I get that question often when I meet newer entrepreneurs. They're like, what's your advice for scaling to 1 million plus, right? And I was like, well, what revenue are you at now? There's it's a difference. Like, so what were you at when you joined Accelerator, and like, were you at the 250 mark, or were you already at
I was at
500K?
I was just at 250, just got
Okay.
in, but my
Okay.
team.
So like, and then so from 250, it took you about 2 years to scale to $1 million
Years
plus.
to
Okay,
hit it.
so you basically 4x revenue in 2 years. I mean, that's amazing.
I,
That's amazing.
I love the
Yeah.
data points. Yeah, that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, I'm Asian, I like to ask the specific numbers.
I am too, sister. Not forget.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
look Asian, but I am, yes.
Yeah, no, I know you're, yeah, because I spoke at an event this past weekend, and actually, like, someone came up to me after, a woman, and she's like, I have a business, it's like barely, she's like, it's on a $1 million plus mark, I want to get there, how do I do it? And I was like, well, what's your revenue? If it's over 250, that's when join Accelerator. I was like, it's the best thing that you can do for your business. And so I love that you are a success story out of Accelerator, because I know we have a few in our chapter as well, but I've gone to some of those learning days, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah,
I've
no
learned
kidding.
a lot.
I'll go back to learning any day. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, because
right?
I think it's like, it's sometimes good to even just get back to basics. And I'm like, I somehow managed to scale to $1 million plus without any systems. And it was just a shit show.
Extraordinary.
It just meant like working, 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week for a few years. It's fine.
That's fine. Just working yourself constant, right?
Working myself to burnout, like literally physical illness, but it's fine. Everything. I was raised by an Asian tiger
And then you're
mom.
like, systems and process. That could make a difference.
Yeah. People. Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, so one of the things I mentioned, I'd love to hear some of yours, right? So one of the things I mentioned when I spoke is limiting beliefs. And my limiting belief growing up was like from my mom, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And so I didn't think about hiring someone or like scaling a team or growing a team, because it was like, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And so that held me back from growth for many years, because I tried to be a solopreneur and scale. And I was like, being a solopreneur and scaling, they don't go hand in hand.
Well, yeah, no, I think limiting beliefs is a really great conversation. I also think it's been used so widely that people, it can both be a limit. It's two sides. I mean, you heard my talk. There's two sides to everything, right? So the limitation, then there's the empowerment. So in a certain context, you're the one who needs to do it to get it right. Absolutely makes sense. But I guess the point is, why would you have that exploration, is to know what's running you, right? To really understand, what has me tick? What beliefs do I have about any area where you have, where you want to grow, right? So any area you want to grow or anywhere you feel stuck, it's a very worthwhile exploration to say to yourself, what do I believe about this area? And what do I believe about myself, right? Versus just, because yes, we take on the beliefs of those around us. I mean, that's part of what it looks like to grow up. But then to actually grow up is to say, what do I believe?
Exactly.
Taken on. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any of those like mantras or models that you grew up with that you've kind of dispelled the myth or something?
Well, here's a good one. So around money, so we'll just talk about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Around money, my family mantra was like, money comes, money goes. And it was very interesting, because that's very empowering in many ways, because there's not like an attachment to money with it. But money comes, money goes also means like, I'm not really worried about my numbers. Like, I'm not actually getting into the numbers like you do, right? So I'm a little different. I don't look at that. And actually, my first company, right? So with all success comes failure. I actually sold that company, but when I sold it, it was in a fire sale. So I actually hadn't kept my eyes on the numbers. And so some things happened where we found out, oh my gosh, like taxes have not been paid. We've got some risk and liability we didn't know we had. And that came from that attitude of money comes, money goes. Now, again, excellent in a specific scenario, but also can be detrimental, right? So, and so now it's like, yeah, you got to keep your eye on that. It's very clear. You got to understand it, whether I like it or not. I got to understand it, because I am the business owner, right? So I think, limiting beliefs are critical, but also attitude, right? So, attitude creates your altitude. And you're going to fail, and you're going to screw stuff up, and you're going to make mistakes. It's like, but what are you going to do with that? Are you going to make the most of the past and what you think went wrong? Or are you going to make the most of what's coming and say to yourself, hey, you know what? I learned some things from this. This was important because I created the situation. It didn't go the way I wanted. What did I learn from this? And how's it going to shape and form the future? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I say that all the time. I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I think what stifles a lot of people from progress or growth in the early on in their entrepreneur journey is like this fear of failure. And I'm like, failing forward is such a blessing. And it's
100%.
either a blessing or like, it's like either a blessing or a lesson, either way. And so I agree with you in that. It's like, don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to try it out, because a big part of entrepreneurship is doing that trial and error. And I always say the best lessons I've ever learned in my entrepreneur journey and in my life are through failures and fuck ups.
Yeah, 100%. Fuck it up, keep going. Just keep going.
It's
and
true.
And and being honest about it feels really good. Like, oh yeah, I fucked that up.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like how I'm gonna change that for the future. It's perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, on that, it's like what you said about the numbers. I'm actually not great with it. Like, I asked about the numbers, but like I don't run any of them. So knowing your zone of genius and scaling and having a team, like what I learned from EO, actually, since I've been in EO, I've been in for 2 years now. I've offloaded that to my husband, and he's a techie guy, and so he's a numbers guy. He's a CFO. He's a CTO. Like his brain just works differently than me, and I'm like, that spreadsheet gives me a headache. And he's like, I built out this custom spreadsheet with a dashboard and everything, and it auto calculates. And I was like,
I love a dashboard. I want to see what's happening, but I don't have the dashboard.
I was like, well, you do all that. Just tell me what our P&L is.
Right.
Are we making money? Like literally, that's all I care about. I was like, are we cash flow positive? And I was like, good. Okay, if we are, then I'm good. If we have to have capital calls, what's wrong? And that's basically the extent of my understanding the numbers.
Good.
Well, the other thing about understanding numbers is I met my mentor. I don't know if you know. Do you know Dr. K?
I don't know
Dr. K. Kristen Kale in EO?
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah. Dr. K. Kristen Kale Telebon. So she's my mentor, and I met her through EO, and she does this mastermind with some EO ladies here to help basically us scale from 7 to 8 figures, because she's done 8 figures. And so she does this every 3 months or so, and she looks at our numbers. And you actually met me last year in my valley, like I mentioned, kind of like my valley of despair and depression, my spiritual awakening. So I didn't really work for like probably 8 months last year because I was just depressed. Like, honestly, I was like really depressed, like clinically depressed, probably. And during that time, so I didn't work. And she's like, what did that cost you? And I was like, about 400K in revenue. And so she quantified it for me, because she like, look at your P&Ls for the year prior, look at your P&Ls for last year. Me stepping out of the business, the revenue dropped 400,000. But I mean, on that note, I think what I wanted to bring that up is because I know your talk, and it was really big on the spirituality and mindset. And I think, and I just finally had my spiritual awakening and like down the rabbit hole last year. And it's made a world of difference in how I run my business this year and how I show up for myself and my team. And I'd love to hear kind of your journey onto that, the spirituality and mindset and how it's affected your business and your life, because I don't think that's talked about enough.
Sure. So it's a great question. So it's funny you called it spirituality, because I didn't talk about spirituality last year, but I love that you that was your perception of it, right?
You were talking about like the meditation and things like that, and the
well, it's what we're human beings, so we we group things together, we make that definition. So one, like my journey started very young. I mean, I was raised by a psychologist, and I had the great benefit of being exposed to a lot of methodologies from AA. My dad was an AA, recovered alcoholic, to the Course in Miracles, to I was raised Buddhist and Christian. I mean, there's all kinds of spaces, but my personal journey is when I hit law school, I started exploring for myself versus my dad really driving that. And I did a lot of work, tantra work, and then I did some landmark work, and then I did, it's all kinds of things. And at this point, what I would say, like for other people listening, is like, well, one, just get on it, right? If you're not interested in how you are made up and what's happening here and what it is that's actually seeing through your eyes, if you haven't actually said to yourself, like, what? Because nobody's found where the soul is in the body. You might want to start getting curious, what is seeing through my eyes? Because you can get real technical. Well, it's the brain, but they open up the brain, they can't find the soul. So to start to look at that is place to start. But, I think it's useful because, in my world, we are spiritual beings having human experience. I am God playing in human form, and believe that, look, everyone's going to go what pulls. If something interests you, go down the road, whether, you like what Abraham Hicks posts are on Instagram. If you're an entrepreneur, you must have read Napoleon Hill, Thinking Grow Rich. She was the first. I mean, what he talks about is universally true. So yeah, you can go down all kinds of spaces. I know you love Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, do all the things, right? But get interested, because there is more to life than you and yourself. And there is what we have to fulfill for ourselves. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're highly motivated to fulfill a part of our personal journey. And it's extraordinary. Right now, I mean, I work in the self-discovery techniques. I absolutely believe they're the most efficient and effective techniques in the world. But, should someone go down that spiritual path? That's up to you, right? But I think everybody in their own way does, whether you're religious, whether you really love nature, I mean, you are communing, with God and nature. That's what's happening. But as an entrepreneur in the context of this podcast, finding the stillness, finding the quiet, being clear and not being driven by this thing. Now, this is an amazing thing. You need to have a great mind. You got to be sharp, right? And by the way, we all need to have a very healthy ego. Nothing wrong with it. But the ego drive you, or do you use your ego? Does the mind drive you, or do you use the mind as a tool? And for me, where I am now, which is extraordinary, and we met last year, and it was a really fun talk to give. I am just continuing down the same path, which is absolutely, my purpose on earth is enlightened civilization. And it comes here. It starts here with myself and then shifts outward, which is why, as you know, I was elected to office. I was a commissioner and a mayor. Extraordinary, right? Like, I thought that was how I was going to change the world. I changed the world with my business, and then I'm going to change the world being in office. And now what I'm experiencing is, and what I believe, my belief, take it or leave it, is I create my reality. So if I want the world to shift out here, it's actually an inside job. So being out here, doing things with other people, it's an inside job, 100%. So the more stillness and quiet, and just asking the questions, getting curious. I mean, you ask yourself that question, what's looking through your eyes?
Yeah.
Tell me you're not going to be like, I don't know. I am. Are you? But where are you?
Yeah.
No, found you yet.
Yeah. And I think that stillness is so important, because I think as entrepreneurs, I know I'm a little bit ADD, and I was like, I know a lot of entrepreneurs are, and you're like, finding that stillness is difficult in the beginning, I think. But last year was the first time I ever really meditated consistently. And I think it like unlocks, it sounds weird and woo-woo, but it's like I feel like so many entrepreneurs, they talk about channeling from infinite intelligence, from consciousness. And
the Vedic field, the Akash records, the all of it.
Yeah, and I swear, like, I get these, and if you read the 7 spiritual laws of success, they talk a little bit about this. There's also like, I think it's like the creative and art of being or something. It's a great cover with like a little black writing. It's on my Amazon essential books list. Actually, it was given to me by an EO forum member, and they talk about this as well. And it's like you get these downloads essentially from the universe, or from like you don't know where these ideas come from, but they're not coming from you. They're coming from somewhere. And I think I don't know if you get these, but a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to have mentioned things like that.
Well, yeah. Well, of course, because when you're in stillness, you're one with Source, and Source is universal. And Source has all the spaces, right? So think about the ego mind wants us to create things because it wants to fulfill things for the ego, which is no problem. But imagine moving past that and creating from what needs to actually be created in the world. So my belief is that every problem that human beings have created, from pollution to radioactive nuclear bombs to all of it, those are all totally solvable by humans. When humans tap into their greatness, when they understand, when they tap into Source, and that's what you're talking about, the downloads, people use a lot of different terminology about it, but, it's the field. That's what it is, right? So tapping in the field, happens really only one way, and that's from stillness.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, because I never used to understand, like, Hazel's another amazing EO woman, and she used to talk about this, like, manifesting miracles thing, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? And then I, found that stillness, started meditating, and then I was like, this is so weird. Like, the things that just, like, synchronistically happen, and the people that come in my path, and the opportunities that come my way, I'm like, this is, like, creepy, and, like, it's like the movie where it's like, you have, like, this, I don't know, rainbow bubble or something, and everything's just going your way. And it's
Flow,
just, yeah,
flow.
the flow
When you
state.
are in the flow state, I mean, flow creates miracles.
It is.
It's the doer, which is the funny part is we're all doers, or else we wouldn't be entrepreneurs, right? So you're shifting from being a doer to being source, like, and working from that space is definitely where I'm at now personally.
Yeah.
Where so
Same. It took me a year of my valley of despair and depression, which I've talked enough about at this point, I think, and then, like, to get here. So for me, it was like the Spark Notes version for those who haven't heard. I mean, I don't know if I shared with you, but I've shared a lot on this podcast that basically, my whole the reason I realized was, like, I was the one who found out my dad cheated on my mom when I was 15. And so from that point on, I made this conscious decision of, like, it's from Think and Grow Rich, right? I didn't realize it, but it's a burden the both concept. It's not like, it's not like if I can succeed, it's how can I do this? Because I don't want my mom to stay with my dad because of financial security for her children. She's miserable, she's unhappy, she's depressed because she's with a man that cheated on her. And number two, I never want to be in a position where I'm with a man because of financial security. And so from 15 onwards, I was like, I got to hustle and I got to get us out of the situation. And so I've been working with my mom, since I was like 12. And by the time I was 33, I had achieved that financial freedom, which is the year before last. And it was really amazing for a year. I was on this high and flew first class and all the fun stuff. And then I was like, I got really severely depressed. And I realized this in hindsight, I realized it's because I lost my purpose in life. It's because I was like, my whole purpose up until 2022 was to help my mother get out of that situation. And she had, she finally divorced my dad when I was an adult just a few years ago. She got remarried. She's, like, happier now. And then now I'm like, but now what's my purpose in life? And then I got lost and I was, like, really depressed. And I realized I went to Tony Robbins' Day with Destiny, changed my life. And it showed me, like, the reason that I had achieved the success I had at the age that I had was because I'm meant to light the way for others. I'm meant to be a trailblazer. And when I made that conscious decision, that's when the downloads and all this, like, problem solving came about, where it's like, okay, well, then how do I do this? How do I help people become self-made millionaires? How do I help people achieve financial freedom? Because so many women in this world are in unsafe, unhealthy, unhappy situations like my mother was because of financial security. Luckily, it was just cheating. I mean, it's bad, but it's not like physical abuse. And I've seen that. I've seen where women stay in physically abusive relationships because of financial security. And that is now what my purpose is. It's what drives me. It's like, how can I empower people to get out of the situation that they're in? And so it's a totally different purpose. And I share that because I would love to hear your purpose, because I think having a purpose that really drives you is so important. And that's a lot of, like, so what is your purpose that drove you to accomplish what you have?
I think my purpose has changed a lot over the years, right? So, I definitely was, at a point in time wanting to create a world that works for everybody. I wanted to, change the world in ways. But I think, really my purpose is my own greatness, and however that shows up. And my purpose is to create an enlightened civilization. And my purpose is to become an enlightened being. I mean, there's really no other game on the planet, in my opinion, now, where I'm at now, sitting here now. Now, that's not for everybody in any moment, right? I think, purpose is useful, and I think it's great to see. I would also say to you, sort of mechanics of consciousness, with any expansion, there is always a contraction. So versus looking at a contraction like that's a bad thing, energetically, you are always going to have expansion to contraction to expansion to contraction. And you start to settle into, that's exactly fine. It's perfect. This is the space I'm in. Because if you don't find yourself there, then you are resisting that you're in that space, and that locks it in. If you remember that Chinese finger trap we talked about on my talk last year, that's the Chinese finger trap. That's I'm resisting that I'm in this space versus relaxing back out, getting wider, and actually being like, you know what, this is my creation. I'm the creator. I created this, and so you create great every time. And it's not the other shoe's going to drop, right? That is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is truly the mechanics. It's physics, expansion, contraction. And when you start to welcome the contraction, you can start to see, wow, I'm growing, because we grow to greater and greater and greater domains. There's no like domain to get to. There's no one spot to get to. There's just the constant evolving, right? It is not a destination. It's the journey. People may as well, if they really thought about what that means. Yeah, because it means like, that means it's all the spaces in between. You know? That's my purpose, is to share more around, what does it look like to become fully actualized, and look, I'm not saying I am, but I am on the journey. I'm very committed. And with that, I'm still going to be successful. I'm going to we're in a material world. If my business is struggling, then I'm not creating success. So I've got something going on there, right? So continuing to create bigger, better, more fun. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you share. I think there's so many like things, little nuggets there, right? That it's about the journey. And I think people don't realize that growth and that progress is continuous. It's like adapt or die, right? Grow or die. Like it's part of that. Like you can't just get complacent, and you have to do it consistently. And it's like,
so that's why you got to welcome the what doesn't feel good. You got to welcome the failure. That's why fail forward makes sense, because you can say, no, this is actually not a failure, right?
And, exactly.
It's like, oh, I'm really okay. I'm growing.
Yeah, it's a lesson, and it's like welcome the problems, and it's such a different shift when you shift that mindset. Because even now, like, I realized I'm grateful that my dad cheated on my mom. Like I had a lot of anger and resentment towards him for a lot, like from my teenage years to my 20s. And then once I became more self-aware of things, I was like, if he hadn't done what he did, I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't have been driven. I wouldn't have been, because I came to that realization because of EO, because I was in a room of EO women, and this one lady was like, how old are you? And I was like, 33. And she's like, how are you here? She's like, kind of like, you're like the youngest person here. Like, how did you make it here? And I was like, she's like, why, what drove you to be successful at your age? And I was like, and I had to think about that. And then when I thought about it, I was like, I think it was when my dad cheated on my mom. And I was like, fuck this, I'm never going to be here again. So I need to get it.
It's a huge awareness to take something like that and understand that it was all perfect, right? So it doesn't make sense to everyone, but it really was all perfect. And if I could say, your dad and your mom are always just doing the best that they know how to do, right? Like they just do it doesn't make, but that's the best that they know how to do in the moment,
Yeah. And that's a huge realization too.
Because it gives you a lot of grace. You can get to some forgiveness, Like, I mean, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. And it's so good that incredible that you had that awareness. Really awesome.
Yeah. I honestly, I credit EO for a lot of my self-awareness. Like what you just shared about parents, like when I first joined EO, my mom and I even though like is this weird, like we have this very, I don't know, it is a weird relationship, right? Like I wanted to succeed for her and because of her and help her, but at the same time we had this tumultuous mother and daughter like clash. And then after I joined EO and became more self-aware, I realized a lot of it was just like the conflict was because I wasn't giving her grace, because I wasn't empathizing, because I didn't get to see things from her perspective, and now I do. And now I'm like, it's a privilege and a blessing to have this ability to be self-aware, to take this space, to be still. She didn't have that. She was an immigrant. In her generation and her day and age, like, it was all about survival mode. Like, I'm grateful that she created it and set and helped, like, allowed me to build that foundation together. But she's the one who really, like, spearheaded the foundation for me to be able to have this freedom and this privilege to be still, to be part of EO. Because if I didn't start at 12 years old, I wouldn't be where I am today. and it's because of her. So now I like have a lot more gratitude for her and a lot more grace for her, and that is something that like
Beautiful.
changed
Yeah,
our whole
changes everything.
dynamic and our whole relationship. Oh yeah,
Miraculous fusion relationship. I mean, what
yeah,
you're sharing is not very different than mine, right? My mom, I was born in Korea. She's first generation immigrant, and very similar, right? But I would say to you, it makes me think of a quote by enlightened master Harry Palmer. True perspective is a convergent point of all realities. And so to really get true perspective, you must be able to widen back outside of your own reality to see, right? So what I heard you say is see, what was the perspective of my mother? What did, not just what she sacrificed, but like she has a perspective and you have a perspective, and everybody has these different perspectives. In a time in the world where people want to talk about how divisive our country is, I laugh because I'm like, who's being divisive? Who's only holding on to their perspective? Are you willing to widen back to perspective? Because if you're not, you are the divisive one. You can say it's them, and one finger out there is three fingers back here. But true perspective, conversion point of all reality, and all reality is, I mean, that's really being able to look back and say, okay, wow, even how you and I are on the screen right now, right? Like how I see the screen is not how you see the screen. Now you can say to me, well, Jane, we were on the same call. You didn't hear that? And I'll be like, well, no, I didn't. Right? I mean, it's so simple, but it is easily forgotten when one is positional. So
yeah,
good for you. That's a beautiful story and very inspiring.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's just a lot of the immigrant story is like that, and it's like I just had a conversation with an entrepreneur friend. She's a newer entrepreneur. She's not quite at the $1 million mark, and she wanted to learn how to get there. And so I take a lot of these coffee meetings and just with local women, because that's like my thing. And I'm like, I actually just launched my nonprofit foundation this year for that reason. So it's the Female Founders Foundation, and the whole mission and purpose is to help women become self-made millionaires as entrepreneurs.
Extraordinary! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
you
I
gotta send me information about that.
I will, yeah. And so that's the whole mission is to, and what I shared earlier, that's exactly like our description is like so many women in society are in unhappy, unhealthy, unsafe situations. And it's because of financial security. And if we can just teach women to achieve that financial freedom, the choices and the freedom that they would have in their lives is just another level. Like when you are financially secure and financially free, you can choose what you want. And it's they say money can't buy happiness, but money buys you a lot of choices and freedom.
Well, so I'm going to spin your head around on that a little bit, right? So while I absolutely agree with you, and I support 100%, right? I would just have you consider that money is just a reflection, as you said in the beginning, of your beliefs.
Oh yeah, no, that's true too.
Right? So you can teach people all the ways to invest and to save and to do things. But if you don't get to the core of that, and one of my great teachers, she says this, Susan James, money is my own natural energy yield. O-N-E-Y, right?
Oh.
So it is a absolute reflection in distance, time, and form, in reality, of my own natural energy yield. So the work is here, right? Like the work is 1,000% around what are your beliefs, and what are you holding on to, right? Even when people talk about scarcity mindset, they want to go into all the stories about why. I mean, that's great. And everyone can say, yeah, that all matches, but that doesn't get to the heart of it, right? So yes, but you're right. Money makes things very easy, right? But it also is a reflection of your personal power, is what I'm saying.
It is,
right? It is a reflection of your personal power, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I agree with you actually. Like so one of the big things I want to emphasize so the goal of the foundation, year one is just getting the fundraising down. I'm actually going to give grants to existing charities that empower women. But year two, the goal is to have a whole database of mentors, and then also a whole database of digital courses created by people like you and I, women who have built $1 million plus businesses. I'll be like, hey Jane, can you shoot an hour-long masterclass about whatever you think would be beneficial, right? Very similar to this podcast, but more like classroom style and tactical, instead of stories, right? And so I'm going to tap into all the EO women I know who are my friends now.
Then I'll do it. Maybe that's a
Exactly.
live class will be.
Yeah. And so basically this masterclass library for women entrepreneurs and a mentorship database. But a big part of what I want to promote are lessons about mindset. And because it's changed my life. Like, so exactly what you said, that like belief and that being and that perspective, that's what I needed to shift to really scale up and to grow in my personal life and in my professional life. Like when I did my first Tony Robbins program, I had been stuck at 150,000 ish a year in my commercial real estate commission revenue only. Like I have other businesses and investments, but in that particular round, I'd been stuck at 150,000 a year for many years. I just plateaued. I did my first program, went to 300,000 the next year, went to 600,000 a year after that, and just continued growing. But it was all a mindset shift. That was all it was.
100%.
Like I did a Tony Robbins program and doubled my revenue, and I was like, wait, what the hell? That's all I needed?
I think you actually came up to me after the talk last year and said to me, like, you love this phrase, the vibration you give is the vibration you get.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a vibrational universe.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to shift what's happening here.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to know how it's going to work out there.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, there's science behind it. Like, before I got into it, before I dove down the rabbit hole, I used to be like, oh, that woo-woo shit, to be honest, right? I was the biggest skeptic. I will be the first to admit I was the biggest skeptic, and I'd be like, what is that woo-woo shit? What are all these crystals? What is all this, right? And I started diving down the rabbit hole and the science behind it, and then I was like, wow, this is actually really interesting. Like the vibrational energy, the quantum physics behind it. It's just like gravity. Like you can't see gravity. Gravity clearly exists in our universe.
Right.
The vibrational frequencies and human frequencies, like we actually, it's science. It's not something that's woo-woo, because it can be measured, and it's like legit. And I think Gary Brecka and Joe Dispenza are the ones who talk more about the science behind it, and how like if you vibrate from love, joy, and authenticity are the highest vibrational, and that's what people talk about when they're talking about good vibes or high vibes, right? So
yeah, very cool.
I love it. Sorry, I'm like,
no, you're right.
In my throat. But on that note, I was like, I know you mentioned earlier Think and Grow Rich. That's something I just honestly discovered 2 years ago when I joined EO. But do you have any other books or that you would recommend, basically? Like, what are your top? Do you have a top 3 or 5 or something that you would say, like, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to read these 5 books or these whatever books that changed my business or my life?
I would have some. So let me give you 2 categories.
Okay.
So category 1 is like what's useful for an entrepreneur. Like, right, is in your business. So scaling up is definitely useful. Think and Grow Rich is very useful. I think everybody's in sales, so I think Radical Prospecting is a very good book by Jeb Blunt, really around the sales hustle. Those are the ones that come to mind right now. On the personal side, what I think in your personal development, there's a book called Living Deliberately that I think is excellent by Harry Palmer. I also think Transcending the Levels of Consciousness by David Hawkins, Power versus Force by David Hawkins, Letting Go by David Hawkins. They're pretty dense, and David Hawkins, you would love it because he's science driven, but he studied consciousness, and I think there's some real opportunity in those books. Right now, I am, I'm more interested in the experiential feeling. Versus the taking on the books. Like I'm just not. There was a time, Cathey, where I read. I mean, I had hundreds of books. I read a book. I have so many. When you I have so many books on my bookshelf. But at some point, you're going to say to yourself, "Well, knowledge is great.
Yeah.
When does the knowledge translate? Right? So it's the thing, right? Like we all know how to lose weight, but you don't do it. So like, how does that go? Right? So
I agree.
So I think. What I would share with you, rather than just the books, although I gave you your answer, is people just sit back and take more time for yourself in the day. Now, I'm not telling you to do a meditation technique. I'm just telling you to slow down. Can you stop and take your phone, put it down, and give yourself 5 minutes just to breathe, look at what's happening outside, and just relax. So entrepreneurs get real caught up and real do. And yes, meditation's a very useful practice, etc. But just, honestly, like my number one tip is just relax. Give yourself a moment. Don't stop looking at your phone. Everything's going to be fine. Just breathe and get more in touch with yourself and ask yourself maybe like, how do I actually feel right now? Give yourself that experience. That I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. And I think that's easier said than done. Yeah. For a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included,
Yeah,
like
of course.
where I'm like, I want to sit still. I'm like, I can't. And my husband jokes, actually, I'm going this weekend to a wellness resort in Arizona for that reason. I'm going from Sunday through Savannah,
Oh,
Cibana. Have you gone
nice.
there?
I've gone there. I've looked at a couple. So
Yeah.
I love retreat spots.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, he's like, you need relaxing. You need like structured, active relaxing. So it's like meditation class, yoga class, sound healing class.
And then you're like, 12:05, and this is what it's going to be. And then, yeah, I know. Yeah, right. The irony of that, right? You're like,
Yeah. I'm like, it's okay. We started with a yoga class, then we have a meditation class, then we have an Ayurvedic lunch, and then we have a spa appointment, and then we have sound healing. Like, but
and then
that's so. But it's like find what works for you, right? For me, it's like I found the guided meditations have worked for me. Like I could never meditate before because I was like mind going a million miles a minute. Actually, there's a great so one of the EOers here in Vegas, his business is that he has a company called In Harmony, and he has something called a sound lounge, and it's basically a vibroacoustic like meditation bed with like the headphones, and it like a 10-minute like nap or meditation or whatever it is on his like sound lounge feels like a 4-hour power nap. And I'm like, I did it once and I was like, I need this. This was like I just felt like I just took a 4-hour power nap, and it was like 10 minutes. And it's kind of crazy when you're like deep in meditation what that can do. And I was like, man, that was crazy. I felt so refreshed for 10 minutes. So
keep doing what works for you, right?
Yeah.
Like what you
Yeah.
do. Awesome.
Yeah. So I think there's always, as entrepreneurs, we know there's always solutions and there's always resources and there's always tools. So if you're like me and you're a little bit ADD and can't just sit still, like regular meditation and do nothing and be in silence, then there's vibroacoustic things, there's guided meditations, there's wellness resorts and retreats that are guided and things. There's sound healing. So I think there's a lot of those tools as well that exist. And there's a solution for any problem. Honestly, I say any problem that exists, there's at least 3 to 5 solutions. It's like what you said, right?
Really fun is when you create those here, right? There or versus outer referrals. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
You know, entrepreneurs just generally, we play a lot of this like, let me compare myself game. Right? We do. We compare ourselves and we want to get to where we think other people are. And sort of as we're wrapping up this talk together, I think, you know, one of the things I would, you know, emphasize is you're doing just fine where you are, right? You're experiencing what you need to experience now. And it doesn't mean you can't have desires and goals and be ambitious. Like you've got to have the ambition, right? But, you know, comparing yourself constantly versus, you know, it's a you and you world. I found in my early days at EO, there was a lot of like trying to get where I thought other people were. And it definitely drove me, and it was perfect, right? But sitting here now and still running 2 companies, potentially starting another one. I'm doing a ton of consulting work now. I'm just very clear, like that no longer serves me to play that game, right? It's like, I'm a Jane. There's no other Jane Bolin out there like me, right? And so what I bring to the table is unique, and what you bring to the table is unique, and I don't need to be anybody else.
Yeah.
You know?
Comparison is a thief of joy, right? Is what they say. And it's true. And like, you know, there's no need to compete. And I always say, like, everything is as it should be all the time. That's one of my sayings to myself. Like, everything is as it should be all the time. And just trust in that. Trust in like the universe, trust in God, trust in I was raised Buddhist. You know, whatever it is that you believe in, trust that you're on the right path. I think that is so important. And to not compare yourself and also like you can't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 10. Like a lot of people look at me and they're like, but you're your age and you've accomplished what you have. And I was like, because I started when I was 12 years old. Like, I think, you know, like not every,
have a different journey.
Everyone has a different journey. So I was like, yeah, but I started when I was 12. If you like, because I know people who's like, their focus in the early on was having kids. I was like, I don't have kids. I'm 35. I don't have kids. you have kids. Like, that's your journey. It's different than mine. Like, you can't compare yourself to me, and you shouldn't compare yourself to me. Like, and so, and also, like, on that, it's also like the vanity metrics, right? A lot of, and that's one thing I really, really appreciate about EO, and I think is important to touch upon and share, is that, like, everyone's very vulnerable and authentic, and there's vanity metrics of like, my business does 5 million, whatever, all this revenue, right? And outside of EO, that's all they stop at that. But inside of EO, we go like, yeah, I do $300,000 a month, but I can barely make payroll because of my expenses. And I think those are the honest conversations and the authentic, vulnerable shares that I really appreciate. And I want newer entrepreneurs to know, like, because I remember when I was in those like phases where I was like, I'm such a failure. I'm such a fuck up. Like, how do I have $1 million plus revenue business and I have capital calls? Like, how am I not profitable at this? Like, my top line looks great. Where's all my money going? Right. And then I realized it's not just me. And almost all entrepreneurs have gone through those phases of like the valleys, and that, like, just because your top line vanity metric of your gross revenue looks great does not mean that you're profitable. And sometimes when you scale up, you actually go from like, oh, I net more having a $500,000 business than I do having a $200 business, because my expenses now,
like, I actually had to see the other way around. Yeah.
And so I think that's,
I definitely find EOers to be particularly courageous. So it takes courage to be honest, to be that, you know, that's what I find to be true about all EO members. Very courageous.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that vulnerability, and that's where I know Brene Brown obviously talked about it in her famous TED Talk, right? But I think EO really exemplifies and embodies that. Everyone in EO embodies that, like, vulnerability is your superpower. And I love that, because I think as entrepreneurs, that really is. And I was so scared to be authentic and vulnerable and honest until I joined EO. And I was like, okay, this is me. Like,
I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, like, it's changed my life, and I think it's like the lessons I've learned from it is just, I don't know if you have anything else other than EO, right? Like, I know how long you've been an EO member for a long time, huh?
Yeah, since like 2000. I started.
Oh wow, 15 years.
In 2010, we fight on whether that started, but yeah.
Yeah. What have you found, I guess, the most impactful in your journey in life, like, other than EO? For me, it was Tony Robbins and EO. Like, is there a particular program or I know I've heard a lot about Landmark from some people. Are there any, like, transformation programs that you've done that you would recommend?
I've done I've done Landmark. I did the Technico work. I've done a lot of work. Right now, I think the most effective work is the self-discovery techniques. And that's what I work in now. It's called self-discovery life mastery work. And I really enjoy it. I think it's, I wouldn't call it a program, but it is a set of techniques. There are some workshops, and they have trainers who support you. But what's beautiful about it is really no one is your guru. It is really a process of self-discovery. Is what I'm doing now. Now, I thought Landmark Forum was great. I think, I really enjoy that. I enjoyed the Course in Miracles. I mean, I've enjoyed all the Tantra work I did. I mean, all of it, right? So you got to go with what's going to work for you. But that's what I do now, and what I would recommend if anyone asks me.
Yeah. Well, any final words of advice for what would you tell your younger self, 10, 15 years ago, year one of your journey?
Oh, what I would say to myself is spend more time on you, on you, and in all the facets, right? Yeah. Versus the awards or doing the things that I think I should do.
Yeah.
Spend more time on me. Get to know yourself more. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I
love that. Thank you so much again.
And please keep me posted about your foundation. And
I will.
I think all the work you're doing is awesome, and I find it totally inspiring that your mission is to empower and inspire women, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for making time and being a part of my journey.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, that's one thing I've learned through EO. Again, I learned so many lessons through EO, but alone we are limited, and together we are limitless. And it's like that support and that collaboration is what's required, right? Like, I can't go on this like mission on my own. I need the support of women like you who have done it and been there and are what these other women are inspired by. And
Yeah,
so
I
thank
love
you
that. And hopefully I
being
see you in Korea.
Oh,
You never know. We'll
yes,
see.
I know. I was like, I want to see you in Korea. Okay, I'm
Right.
gonna stop this.
All
And
right.
then that
Thank
way
you
I'll